my name is Rachel, and I'm the artist behind VanDolls folk art. I'm an American folk artist who is a fourth generation folk artist. One of the materials that I specialize in is paper mache. Today I'm going to teach you my process for making paper mache pulp. In this class, you will learn types of paper and what to avoid, my favorite papers, where to find paper, how to break down and process your paper for shredding, soaking, processing, and breaking down the soaked paper, how to process your soaked paper into paper pulp, prepping the paper for storage, and how to properly store the paper pulp. Materials you can recycle to make paper pulp to produce paper clay can be found in a variety of ways. You can source a newsprint from mailer ads, old phone book pages, junk mail, newspapers, or copy paper. The types of paper you want to avoid are anything with a glossy coating, cardstock or cardboard, envelopes, and paper bags, because those materials do not break down fine enough to produce a usable paper pulp for paper clay. Now that you know what materials to use, let me show you how to break them down for processing. In order to produce the best quality paper pulp to make the best quality paper clay, you need to process the materials you have collected. There are several ways to do this. You can tear the paper into squares or strips, or you can shred the paper using a paper shredder. I have found that shredding the paper with a paper shredder is the easiest way to get the best results. If you decide to use this method, make sure that you tear the strips into sheets small enough to fit into the opening of the paper shredder. If you are using paper from catalogs, make sure that you remove any staples that they may have before you run them through your paper shredder. Make sure you empty the shredder as you go and collect the material in a plastic bag for use later. Turn off your paper shredder, remove the shredder head, collect the material that you've shredded, and place it into a plastic bag for use later. Now that you have collected all your material, it's time to move on to the next step in the process. Now that you've gotten your paper broken down, it's time to prepare your paper for pulping. The first thing you need to do is soak it to loosen up the fibers for the pulping process. The first step you take to prepare the paper for soaking is to find a vessel that is large enough to hold your processed paper loosely suspended in water. Place your processed paper in the container loosely and then fill the container with warm water. Allow the fibers in the paper to properly separate. You will need to soak the paper for at least 24 hours. Periodically stir the paper in the water to make sure that the paper evenly soaks through. Now that you've learned how to properly break down the fibers in the paper, it's time to move on to the next step in the process. Let's get our paper ready for the pulping process. Once the paper has finished soaking, place the paper in a colander and thoroughly rinse to prepare the paper for pulping. This is a vital step in trying to remove some of the chemicals that were released during the soaking process. Once you finish rinsing your paper, set it aside so that we can prepare it for the next step in the pulping process. Congratulations, you just learned a vital step in preparing your paper for the pulping process. I'll see you in the next video where we learn how to turn the soaked paper into paper pulp. Processing the paper into pulp. The first thing you need to do is break the paper into smaller portions of roughly 2 cups of material. You want to make a good mix of 1 part paper to 4 parts water to allow the fibers enough room to suspend in the liquid and properly separate into pulp. The quantity of paper and water you can process at one time will be dependent on the amount of room you have in the container you are processing it in. How to break the paper down into pulp? You can use a variety of different tools to accomplish this. You can use a blender, a stick blender, or a food processor. Or if you're really patient, you can try and break it down by hand. The food processor is the tool I will be using today. Side note, make sure that the tool you use to process your paper is not also used for food due to the chemicals that may be present in the paper. You're going to want to process the paper in 2-minute intervals, checking the consistency and manually stirring the pulp in between blending to ensure even consistency. Blend the paper for at least 4 minutes to make sure that all of the fibers have properly separated. Once the paper has been thoroughly processed, it's time to move on to storage. Gather up all the pulp that you made and place it into a feed sack or a piece of burlap to squeeze out all of the remaining moisture. Now that you have put all of the time and effort into making your paper pulp, it's time to learn how to properly store it. To store your paper pulp, place it in an airtight container. You will want to add a solution of 10% water and bleach to the paper pulp. Fill your container with paper pulp and top it off with the bleach solution to prevent the paper from getting moldy. Congratulations, you have just made a key component in the paper clay making process.
Thank you so much for learning along with me.
In this class, you learned how to select the right materials for processing into pulp, how to process the raw materials to prepare them for pulping, and how to make the pulp.